You're listening to Off to Market with Scott Farley and Hamish Chadwick.
I'm Scott.
And I'm Hamish. And this week Scott's going to be talking about how invention can benefit Australia and society. Sounds fascinating. What have you got to say, Scott?
Thanks, Hamish.
That's all right.
Look, it's something I've been wanting to speak about for a wee while. I'm madly passionate about invention, and I think in Australia we're in a unique position to be good inventors. A lot of patents come out of Australia and New Zealand, and for me, I think you can sort of almost pin it down to a few critical factors that allow us to be good inventors, and in turn, if you do the right invention, create the right new enterprise, it can be very good for manufacturing, in Australia, because you don't want to be manufacturing me-too items against the Chinese. They've just got that all over us. But we certainly are in a situation where we can do unique products in Australia, and it can support good manufacturing facility because of the profit margin of a unique product that can't be competed against. So I guess for me, when I look at it, I think a lot of Australians have come off the farm, and farm life is an area where you're a little bit isolated and you have to make things work. You're basically there. You usually have to be fairly skilled with your hands, and you can make stuff work. So there's one little factor. A lot of us have come from rural backgrounds, whether it be one or two generations, three generations back. But that's one part of it. We're all pretty well educated, compared with a lot of the rest of the world. We have good education levels, and if you look back in history, the people who were inventors were the aristocrats who were educated, and so there's an aspect of that. The other thing is, when we do trades or whatever we do here in our jobs, because we're fairly isolated as a country, we're generally taught those sort of trades on a multidisciplinary type system. So if you're an electrician in Europe, you might only work on GPOs or lights or air conditioning or whatever. In Australia, you really have to do the whole lot. You're not just going to be working on one aspect. There's just not enough of us, and we're so sparsely separated that we don't seem to just be specialists in areas. So we're multidisciplined in our training, and I think all these factors combine to allow us to be quite inventive in our manners. Hopefully, that can be used to our gain and help our export developments. A lot of the projects we do here at F3 are all about export. We don't really do products unless they're really high value, low volume type products that can be supported only in Australia. They generally developed for international markets because the export markets are so much bigger. So I think the fact that you invent a new idea, it's totally new to the world, it generates new enterprise, so the new business generates with that. And the benefits are huge as far as employing people. Everyone who's touches that project, it's all new money, new work, and any export money is new money into the big pool. We're quite a developed country, but a lot of our money just spins around in circles. It comes in and goes out in the same channels. Export money is new money. It's like if you picture Australia as a bucket, and a hole one side and a hose on the other side. The export money is the hose in, and the hole on the bottom is all the money we spend on new cars that come from overseas, etc., etc. So it's really nice to have that balancing point. I know a lot of it's our mining and our agriculture fuels that input as well, but if you can export a product and have it manufactured here in Australia, it's got huge benefits. So the reason a new invention, especially if it's new to the world and unique, can support manufacturing in Australia is because there's not a competition to the bottom of price range. It's always got good profit margins in it. If you develop it properly, and so you can actually spend more money on manufacturing and still make money on that product. Obviously, you don't want to spend too much, but if you design things in a way that takes a lot of labour out of them, you can actually afford to manufacture products in Australia. And even if you have a bit of labour in it, like Cochlear is a classic. It's got magnificent technology, all patented, and they manufacture here and sell around the world. So fantastic example of that situation. And the thing with manufacturing, it's sort of one of those things that a lot of people sort of look down on, manufacturing, working in a factory, whatever. But it's a really soft option when you leave school. Like, kids leave school and they've got all these options or all these directions, and they're almost overwhelming. A lot of people come out of school, the world's their oyster, but they may not be intellectually inclined, and it doesn't mean they're not smart. It just means that they might be more inclined to a trade or better with their hands or whatever. I remember years ago going to the Holden factory when I was a student at university, and almost all of the plant equipment on the ground, all the automation, everything was designed by a factory worker who had started off out of school, left school at year 10, went into the factory as a working hand, just assembling things, just getting involved, easy stuff, easy transition into work. And he was incredibly intelligent and just understood the way things worked, and eventually ended up designing all their production line. So it's a really nice soft entry and lots of ability to work your way up a chain, and that's why I love it. I love manufacturing. It gives kids a way out of, a soft entry into the workforce, and lots and lots of support, lots and lots of educated and qualified people to teach, and lots of avenues inside that manufacturing plant to take. You might want to go into accounting, or you might want to go into design, you might want to go into shipping or transport or warehousing, anything. There's plenty of different options in a factory. So I love that aspect. I think it's very good socially. So as far as I'm concerned, Invention is really a lovely thing for Australians to have. It's one of our little benefits, and it really can help us to try and overcome this Me Too mentality, and trying to, I don't know how many factories I know of that just try and produce products in competition to China, and eventually the competition gets too tight, and there's no money in it. No one's getting paid, so they fold. The Invention, I think, is a really important thing to foster in Australia, and a lot of it unfortunately gets shipped off, and we get paid a royalty from a multinational overseas. It's a crying shame, to be honest. So I'd love to see more investors getting behind Invention, and obviously governments are doing quite a bit now, but there's still more to be done. If you look at the holistic picture of how an invention improves society, we've had an individual here who's developed a $300 million company, an individual. Like, that's a fantastic benefit for Australia. All export money, all into Australia, employing lots and lots of people, generating more business as it goes along. It can't be underestimated, the benefits of Invention.
Okay, and it's also interesting. I know, Scott, you've spoken about this before, but Australia culturally is quite accepting of new ideas and invention, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Because you were mentioning that other countries are not so accepting. So they're a little bit more conservative, where Australia seems to be will buy new things more readily, and buy into new concepts more readily. Why do you think that is as well? Because you mentioned also that some companies will use Australia. We spoke about this before, but some companies will use Australia as a test bed. Why is that? Is there any other more reasons to?
The test bed is different to the first question. I don't know why Australians are good early adopters. We love technology. We've always had more cars per capita and more phones per capita than most other countries, even America, which is strange because America's very, very consumer driven. But we do seem to have that. I'm not sure why that is. Perhaps it's just we've had to adapt and accept things more readily than other countries because we're isolated and come from farming, or because we just want to feel like we're as good as the other countries, and so we try and have the newest and best. Not really sure what that is. The test bed issue is more related to our isolation. If a multinational comes to Australia and does their testing, for one, if you can launch something in Australia, you can pretty much launch it anywhere in the world because we're so culturally diverse, and we're so sparse. Like, we've got this huge, as they call it, tyranny of scale. Right. Because you've got to try and distribute stuff. You can't just have one distributor, a representative in the middle of London, serves all of London. You have one representative in Sydney, and you can do half of Sydney. Yeah. You've got to have reps in every state, maybe multiple reps in every state. They've got to travel huge distances, so their day is, far less productive than someone in Europe who can visit 20 shops in a day. it's really quite hard to launch something in Australia. Our cultural aspect means that culturally, if a product works in Australia, it's going to work pretty much anywhere in the world to a degree. And also the other one was the fact that if the product flops, it's not. We're so isolated that they don't get any mud on their face.
Really, but being with the way media works and the way information can travel,
could have changed. But I'm not sure that if you're selling directly in Australia, that someone in Europe's going to ever find out about whether the product saw the light of day or not, unless it's an online product, I guess. Yeah, but anyway, that's the reason for that. Why we're early adopters, I'm not sure. But I remember being at ICAST over in Orlando there a couple of years back for a product, and I shared a bus with a guy from Lawrence, which is a really big electronics company out of America, and he quite regularly travels to Australia. He said, because I said, how does that work? You must have a fraction of the sales over here in Australia than you do in America. He goes, no. He said, more people over here own fish finders and electronics for their boats per capita than anywhere in the world.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
We love them. So so I'm not sure why that is, but we're certainly very good at that. And there's a bell curve that's very, very small at the beginning and grows to quite large in the middle, and then peters off. And it's all about early adopters being a very small part of the market, and then people like to follow. So early adopters get in very early. It's like 5% of the market, and then everyone follows that person or follows that advocate, and then you get the sheep that fill the middle of the bell curve, and that's where your major sales are, and then it peters off as the life cycle diminishes.
Right.
But it's a very, very small, very sharp, steep curve at the beginning there. So that's why launching products is so difficult, trying to get those people involved, and that's why advocates are so important.
Yeah, I suppose the interesting point to make, which is just an interesting discussion point more than anything, there's no sort of point to get across here, but I think I agree with you, Scott, that invention, entrepreneurs need to be supported, but unfortunately I think it's the old problem of when a concept is such as invention, problem solving, it's intangible. I mean, when you say investors should get on board more, I think they would, but just as a concept, invention, design, coming up with ideas to solve particular problems. I mean, they're all intangible subjects until someone like you starts to design something, or until someone grabs a napkin in a restaurant, or so to speak, and starts scribbling out a design. Yeah. It's a bit hard for people to grasp what invention actually is. Yeah. So maybe it needs to be championed more as a subject, what actually is invention in that sense, and then you can get some sort of market around that. But yeah, it's just a very interesting topic, isn't it? Well,
that's why we generally we try wherever possible. I mean, I'm a one-man band in Morningside here. I mean, nothing flashy about me, but if I employ people and have staff and secretaries and all the rest of it, then all of a sudden I can't get people to a point where their product is tangible for a reasonable price. So that's my whole objective, to try and get people to a point where they can spend a limited amount of money and get something that can actually be used to present to investors, which is tangible. Working prototype that looks and feels exactly like a manufactured part, and that's what we're trying to aim for. But I think the biggest issue with Australian investors is that it's so easy to make money through property in Australia, and that's where people put their money. It's easy to turn it around. There's very, very little risk in it. Whereas if you try and talk about invention, you're not only investing in the product, you're investing in the person who's invented it. So you have to be careful about how you get involved there, and it can go pear-shaped. A little bit of risk involved, but a lot of returns as well if you get the right project and you get it managed properly. So there's many mechanisms to manage those systems properly, so that you don't end up relying on the fact that the inventor could run off and do something silly. And generally the inventor's not necessarily the best business person, so an investor might be a better business person than the inventor, and in that case it's a very nice synergetic relationship. Just go back, I said advocates before. People might not know what an advocate is, but basically what an advocate is, I mean, you might want to jump in here and talk about advocates, but from my understanding it's...
I think it's more sort of how you're defining advocate.
Yeah, so an advocate for a product is someone who's trusted in the industry and famous, and so basically you get them on board with your product, they talk about it and give it credibility, and then the sheep, the second adopters, not the early adopters, jump on board and follow that advocate. So that can be quite important for a launch, and people have realised how how valuable that is now. So you don't get it for free anymore. But in the old days, an advocate would get a sample of a product and talk about it, and off you go.
Yeah, in my world it's just called third-party endorsement. It's just endorsement.
Yep.
So it's finding someone that can align with your product and champion it, and it's just providing, all you're doing is providing familiarity to something which is an unknown. So you're providing extra tangibility to something which is untried, untested.
Yep.
And that's the other thing too, is if you're selling something which is completely new, even the price itself will raise suspicion whether it's too cheap, perceived to be too cheap, or perhaps perceived to be too expensive, until the value proposition is understood. And so I think that's why searching for third-party endorsement is vital in a lot of these cases.
Yeah.
And I suppose depending on we Scott and I have been working. Well, I've been working with him on a product, just the naming of this product, obviously for me, but the endorsement will come from the fact that it will be sold through a massive, website. Don't want to mention the name, in the United States, and just that alone, once sales start to increase for that product, that in itself will be an endorsement as well. So, going into a target market that will understand the product, and then the uptake from that, everyone will see that it's going gangbusters. That's the idea for this product. It hasn't happened yet, but that is endorsement as well. So sales figures and just people talking about it online, people talking, taking photographs of it on social media, being able to tag it, all that sort of thing. So that takes time.
Positive reviews.
That's it, yeah. But that in itself is, you've got to think about that in the early days, as to how you're going to craft your brand so it's more easily endorsement is more easily obtainable.
Excellent. Yeah, so that's about covers me off. Yep. Invention, get behind it, investors.
You won't, absolutely.
You won't be sorry.
They won't be. No, it's an amazing thing to invest in.
Yeah, it's very satisfying.
Great. Thanks, Scott.
You've been listening to Off to Market with Scott Farley and Hamish Chadwick.